It doesn't.
Hey everyone, welcome back to UmattR TV. We're so glad you're here to watch us today, and I'm here with a few of my Farmington High School friends. I'm Maya, and I'll actually next year be attending Arizona Christian University, and let's talk to some of my friends.
Hey, I'm Matthew. Since we all go to Farmington High School here, I like band and I like tennis, and next year I'm actually going to Brigham Young University. Just got accepted a few days ago, so I'm pretty excited.
Awesome.
Hi everyone, I'm Cassidy. I like to read and I like to run a lot. The next fall I'll be attending Fort Lewis College, and I'm going to be studying English. I don't know.
That's a hard one.
I forgot that one.
Well, today we have a real treat because we have a special guest today. We have Mr. Kyle Rhodes on. He is the president of PESCO and also the president of Farmington Municipal School Board. So we're very glad to have you on today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
This is exciting.
And he's also one of our sponsors, so that's really cool. We're very grateful. So today we're just going to be talking to you about some of your thoughts and your takes on the oil and gas industry in New Mexico as a businessman, and also your takes on public school and returning to school as a school board member.
Okay.
So yeah, we're just going to start with the first question.
Cool.
To get things rolling. So you're the president of PESCO. So what does PESCO do, and how many people do you have working?
So PESCO is a manufacturer of equipment for the energy industry. So we sell equipment, we design and sell equipment pretty much all over the United States. And we've historically been in the oil and gas part of the energy industry, but we're developing equipment for the hydrogen industry, so we'll be able to produce hydrogen from methane. And so you guys probably are aware of the big push for green energy. Hydrogen's one of those things. We recently signed a deal where we're going to be producing some water filtration units, first putting them out on the reservation, seeing how they work and everything. And so what we're trying to do is diversify a lot of our growth coming from areas outside of oil and gas that impact other areas of our society and our community. Green energy, water, things like that.
Awesome, so you guys are adapting.
Yeah, so right now we have about 240 people, and about a year ago before COVID we had right under 500 people there at PESCO. So yeah, and it's a good organization. So yeah, we have fun. I've been in it since the beginnings, and so yeah, thank you for asking that.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I don't know, I learned something new today. I'm wondering, what can we do to educate more students about what your industry does and what PESCO does?
So you're going to get me on my soapbox, because when we talk about the oil and gas industry, I wrote down some numbers before I came just to make sure I was correct in this, because what you see in this state is a push toward moving away from fossil fuels, and some other initiatives that are kind of questionable. When you realize what oil and gas puts into the coffers of this state. So for example, state and local revenue, oil and gas contributed $4.7 billion in fiscal year 2020. So that's communities and the state. And of the state budget, oil and gas contributed 34% of their total budget. So it was $2.8 billion of about an $8 billion budget. And so that's a huge amount of revenue that's going to the state. The other thing to keep in mind, because I'm also on the school board, is that 45% of the state budget goes toward education. And so when you start talking about, there was just yesterday what passed in committee in Santa Fe was a bill saying we're going to have a moratorium on fracking through 2025, through the year 2025. Well, what they've already estimated is by doing that, you're going to cut revenues to the state by $11 billion. And so you can imagine how that affects funding for schools. And so some of these things, I'm really passionate about responsible energy development. So when I say responsible, you just can't go out there and pollute the air, pollute groundwater and things like this, but it's an important part of New Mexico, an important part of our economy, and really an important part of our society. And so I'm fearful of what happens in Santa Fe in regards to oil and gas, our budget. And here's the reality, and I feel like I bring a little different perspective to the conversation because I'm involved in industry, I'm involved in education, and what people don't tend to understand is that education is the foundation for everything else that happens in a state, especially in their economy. So it's almost like a three-legged stool where you have education, you have economic development, but you also have social reform. So that's helping people, you know. And all revolves around that, but it's the basis is education. So the better we can make education, the better we can make this state and the people in the state. And it's a balanced approach. And when you cut off 45% of the funding because you cut off oil and gas, that's going to impact education tremendously.
Right.
So, are you glad you asked that question?
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. Next.
Okay, moving into our third question, which kind
Okay.
of relates to that, talking about education and industry. What are your thoughts about what the future will hold for future occupations?
So,
For kids, sorry.
for kids, right, absolutely. So, I think that what's going to continue to be huge is education. Now that how that education is delivered may change.
Right.
We have found out through this pandemic that totally virtual is maybe challenging and not real effective, but I think education is going to be a very important career in the future. I think that healthcare, all areas of healthcare is going to be tremendously needed, but everything else is going to revolve around technology. And so that's artificial intelligence, that's robotics. You know, manufacturing, of course, we're in manufacturing out at PESCO, but the manufacturing that involves robotics, artificial intelligence, that's going to be a key to the future. What people don't realize is that, you know, we think that we're competing against Albuquerque or we're competing against Texas, but we're competing worldwide in the economy and education. So that's why all that's tied together, because we're competing against engineers in India. We're competing against healthcare professionals in Germany. And what we need to do is continue to focus on these high-tech things to make the United States as I don't want to say prosperous, but as strong as we can. And so I think those are the main jobs we need to be looking at: software development, things like that.
Like the new ones and the new jobs, and then there's jobs that are always going to be there. I think that's kind of.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if you take it out at PESCO, one of the main things we do is weld. Well, that welding has technologically grown over the years. Where it used to just be stick welding and they set maybe one or two parameters and they welded. Now it's automatic welding where they have to set wire speeds and amperage and all sorts of stuff. They really have to understand how they're depositing a weld metal in a vessel, how quickly it is, and making sure it's a quality weld, because these things are going out on wells that are operating at 10,000 pounds. They can't blow up. And so even in the trades that used to be, you thought were kind of low tech, they're becoming very high tech. And you kids, you young people, need to really embrace technology and understand how it's used. I mean, we use it across the board in our company.
So you're talking about how education and the oil and gas industry, everything, it all connects together.
Yeah.
So I know we have a lot of peers, there's a lot of other students who, they start off young and they really like going to school, and then as you get older, it progressively is kind of like, school, like, so I think there's a lot of students who don't understand the importance of education, and you are an adult who you're on the school board, and you're devoted to helping kids learn. So what would you say to those students who are struggling to find motivation?
Hang in there. I mean, truly, so what we're trying to do in Farmington, and I think it's really important to note this, is we've been working on a system called the Farmington Model of Instruction for 12 years. And we found within the last 2 or 3 years that it really synced really well with a system called the high reliability system. So we've kind of shifted, even though it was kind of in our makeup, we've shifted toward that. And what that is a way to, I mean, there's different facets of it, but it's a way to say what is helping our kids learn. And the teachers and the principals and everything, that's what we do on Mondays, is what is the best way to get kids to learn and understand and be passionate about their learning. And so I guess what I would say is that, at least in Farmington, we're trying to put a system in where we keep kids engaged, keep kids interested in learning. And that's our job, is to continually try to get better at keeping kids engaged. Because when they're not engaged in, that's one of the reasons Farmington is known throughout the state for their arts programs. That's a band, orchestra, everything. And we're recognized with that. And that's another way to keep kids engaged in school, ultimately to see academic success, So I would say hang in there, because we're trying to get better.
Yeah, 'cause I feel like the school system's kind of been the same for a lot of decades, and just now recently, for the past, I don't know, a couple decades or so, it's been rapidly changing. So right now we're all kind of just the guinea pigs, right?
Well, you're exactly right. And that's been one of the transitions I've had to make. Because out at PESCO, we can put a new process on the shop floor, and we can tell that it's going to work in a few days or a week or a month at the most. Education isn't that way. It may be years before you see that what you put in place in 3rd grade helped that 10th grader be more successful. And it just takes that long, and I've had to sit over there and just twiddle my thumbs going, really? Cannot we get better data quicker? But you can't in education. What we've really been focusing on as a board in Farmington is trying to build the best team of leaders that we can get, and that's at the district level, that are passionate, that are very intelligent, have really good ideas, and then focus in on what is the best way to educate our kids. And I think over the last, I've been on the board for 10 years now or so. And what you saw even 4 years ago was a lot different than what you see today as far as the quality of our education. And it's just from that deliberate, focused, intentional on helping kids succeed. That's what it's all about. So yeah, I hope you're seeing things different a little bit, and you're not just
Yeah.
hopefully. I mean, truly, in any job you're going to be at, if you're not constantly challenging yourself and being challenged, people at your level are going to get bored, and you're going to move on.
Do you think that because of the pandemic and the way that technology has interfered in our lives, that education will be different after this?
I hope it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope it is. I think that Farmington was as prepared as we could be,
Right.
because, we're one of the only districts in the state that every kid had a computer.
Yeah.
We'd been working on broadband, we'd been working on all that stuff, that infrastructure. But when it really came down to it, it came down to the teacher. And the reality is that teacher, they were working all the time, and they had kids at home. They had their own life, and then they were doing all this other stuff. That's not sustainable. And so I hope that we've learned something through this and we design things a little differently. And that's why I say education is going to continue to be extremely important, but I think it's going to be done differently. Where we can, something I read several months ago was where you can zoom in to a professor from New Mexico State that's an expert in metallurgy or whatever, a chemical engineer, and tune into his lecture that he has proven that he's a extremely talented and gifted at giving lectures and helping people understand. You guys see that. Some teachers are really gifted at that, some aren't, And so I think that there's a way to do that is just a better way to do it.
Yeah, so just like every student's different, every teacher's different too.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right.
Yep.
So
Different
then-
learning styles, different teaching styles.
That's one of the things we're trying to do in this district is that, I don't know if you ever heard your parents talk about, I want Maya in this second grade classroom because this teacher's supposed to be really good. What we're trying to do in this district is to raise all of our teachers up to that level where you say, Maya could take any one of these 3 second grade classes and be successful. Because all the teachers, because they're in the PLCs and everything, are up to this level. That's our goal in this district, to do that. And through this system that we're developing, we can get there.
So obviously leadership is very, very important in
Yeah.
education and in everything in life.
So you look at, so for the board, that's one of our biggest initiatives is how do you build a strong organization? And so an organization, it doesn't matter whether it's a school, if it's a hospital, if it's PESCO, if it's the state capitol, whatever it is, a church, the strength of that organization will determine how effective they are. One of the keys is great leadership. Great leadership in all key positions. And so that's what the board and our Superintendent Schmidt has been working on ever since he's been here, is how do we get strong, talented, values-based people in every key position across the district. And you guys experienced Tim Keenitz. That guy's amazing. He is phenomenal. Passionate, values-based, very intelligent. That's the kind of person we want throughout the district.
Right.
And we intentionally focus on those type of things.
And this year we found out he's pretty good at adapting too.
Yeah. I'm really proud of Tim. He's good.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, that's our principal at FHS.
Yeah.
We love him.
I hope he watches this one.
I hope he watches this. So, leadership is super important. So, what can kids do now to become good leaders later, or even right now?
So, what you guys are doing now is important. So, let me just tell you, and I'm really passionate about this, your values are the most important thing, okay? And you've got to lead with values. And I think that you guys, in your heart, you know when you're not doing something right, okay? And I was just reading this morning about, you know, your actions really are a byproduct of your thoughts, okay? So I think that's the biggest thing, is to just lead with values. But then we're studying a methodology at PESCO, and it's called the outward mindset. And we did what was called a culture transformation back in 2010. It's February 2010, so it's been 11 years ago. And what that culture transformation talked about was putting out your stated values for the organization, and then what behaviors modeled those values. And you know, they say, well, that takes 2 or 3 years. Well, let me tell you something. That's an ongoing thing, that it never stops. And so now we're looking at a little different deal, and it's called the outward mindset. And let me just give you an example of what this looks like. And Greg will appreciate this, because you can look at a TED Talk, and it's a guy that's a leader of a SWAT team in Kansas City. And he said that when he first took over the SWAT team, he had an inward mindset, and I'll explain a little bit what that is, but he had an inward mindset, and his team, because he was the leader, his team had an inward mindset. And so that means that the only people they were really thinking about when they would go into a situation where they had to apprehend somebody or whatever was themselves, what was happening to them, and that they got their guy, and it didn't matter what else happened. And so they would go in, and if there was any dog that confronted them, they'd shoot it. When they took the prisoners, they'd throw them in the back of the van. It wasn't cool at all, and in Kansas City in the summer, it's very hot. And he said, and I started thinking about it, and he says, really, where I started making my transformation was my son, my teenage son, said, Dad, I can't talk to you. And he says, why not? It's because you're a robot. You don't hear what I'm saying. And so he started making this inward transformation. And so he said what they started doing, what their team started doing was, they thought, if we had a dog, would we want the policeman to come in and shoot our dog? And he said, of course not. So they started, treating the dogs differently even. And that put the families and people where they're apprehending people more at rest. But the thing that really impacted me the most was they were going into this house, and they had 2 suspects in there. And they go into the house, and there's multiple families in this house with little kids and babies, and everybody's crying. It's just commotion. And this leader says, I couldn't find one of my team members. So he went in the kitchen, and that team member was standing there making bottles of formula. He makes this formula and takes it out to the mothers and said, here, this is for your babies. Everybody settled down. Everybody calmed down. It was a calm situation. They were able to get the suspects, and everybody felt good about it. That's an outward mindset. Thinking about somebody else instead of yourself. And so when you talk about a leadership position and how you become a leader, think about other people. Think about what their situation, where they're coming from. You talk about the teachers. Think about, gosh, they started working at 6 this morning. They're done at maybe 4, but then they've got kids texting them or emailing them, and they've got 2 babies at home and a husband, and maybe he lost his job because he got laid off because of COVID. So thinking about other people's situations, then you start thinking, wait, how can I help? You know, so when you ask about leadership, that's what it's about.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really solid definition. So kind of moving into the things we're facing right now, we obviously this week, middle school and high school got to go back to school. Matthew, you went today, right?
Yeah.
So what is your take as a school board member and president on kids returning to school?
Okay, so I'm not going to be politically correct, okay? But we should have had them in school in September, okay? There was data all over the United States, all over the world, that said kids need to be in school. And now, let me qualify that in that I think that with both teachers and students, that we needed to be understanding of if they felt safe or not and offer those options, okay? But the kids that wanted to be in school and the teachers that wanted to be in school and felt safe being in school needed to be there, okay? Probably what the community doesn't see is how many plans the district did to try to convince basically the governor, because the public education department was really wanting us to be back in school. Really convince the governor and the health officials to let us go back in school. We gave them data, we gave them all sorts of stuff. Matter of fact, out at Pesco, we had a cleaning plan that we developed that our major customer, ConocoPhillips, asked if they could have that plan to give to their vendors across the world. We gave that to the school district to implement that plan because we wanted people to be safe. And so I'm really excited to have kids back in school. They need to be back in school. You know, that connection you have with other kids and your teachers and then that environment is so important. And so I'm really excited to have them back in school. I'll tell you, really frustrating that it couldn't happen before.
Yeah.
Really frustrating. Again, taking into account that some people didn't feel safe, we're cool with that, you know, and we'll accommodate that. But, you know, when we got numbers back, 60, 70% of kids want to be back in school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of kids wanted to be in school, but how do you feel about the negative feedback coming back from a lot of the teachers in the district about not wanting to go back? Because I guess I don't know, but I know kids have a choice to go back, but did the teachers have a choice to go back?
Yeah, for the most part, they did have a choice.
Okay.
Because we still had kids learning virtually.
Right.
And so we still had places for those teachers to teach virtually. And so I don't think we ever have been in a situation where we had to say, I know you don't want to come back, but you've got to because we have this overload of kids.
Right.
I think we always were fortunate that we had this balance, that the teachers that just, and frankly, you know, there are teachers that shouldn't be back in because they're pregnant or they're at risk for whatever reason, and or they were a caretaker for somebody that was at risk. We got to understand that. We got to try to accommodate that. And so I think that we're fortunate that we kind of had this balanced approach, that we could accommodate people that wanted to be in school and people that didn't want to be in school.
Okay.
Yeah. Frankly, I didn't hear a lot of negative.
Okay.
Now,
That's good.
that may be because I'm old and deaf. Too. Yeah, so.
No. Remember, you just graduated a few years ago.
So
Wow.
I know there's like a few kids out there who they just don't want to follow the rules that have been set in place. What would you say to the people that just ignore the safety guidelines?
Yeah, that's tough. You know, we have to come down on them because their decisions affect so many people. And and their decisions may not make somebody else sick, but it could impact decisions that Santa Fe makes or the district makes, that if we can't comply with this, then they're going to shut us down.
It's kind of like that outward mentality you're talking
Exactly.
about, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So think about somebody else and how it impacts them, and let's make better decisions. Part of that is how you send that message, to try to gain understanding instead of just jamming it down their throats. Even that doesn't work sometimes. We know that. So, but yeah, I mean, that's what I would say. This can impact this whole school coming back. Do you want to be the cause of that? You know, so that's what I would say.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome.
I like the focus on outward thinking instead of inward thinking, because I think that's how a community and how this world is going to get better, is by people not thinking about just themselves and not selfish attitudes. Because when you do something for someone else, it helps them, but it also helps you. You feel better about
Right.
how you're living.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you know, I've been thinking a lot about this community. So I was raised in Farmington, and we've been really fortunate that if you look at over the history of Farmington, that the people in the key positions, so I'm talking mayor, city council, the CEO of the hospital, the president of the college, the superintendent of schools, police chief, fire chief, all those people in those key positions, and then in industry of the larger companies like T. Greg Marion, people like that, we've always been very fortunate that we've had values-based people in those positions. And that's why you have people like Vicki that come out. I mean, she's the type of person that you build a community on, that are thinking about other people and how you get better. You know, and so we've been really fortunate. And you guys might find out as you leave this area that this is a pretty good place to be. And we're really fortunate because it is a values-based community.
I think we forget that sometimes.
It's easy to.
It's easy
Yeah.
to look at those negatives
Oh,
instead
yeah.
of those positives.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so yeah, it's about giving back. It really is.
Well, I think that's a great note to kind of end on today. Giving back to the community is the most important thing, and just looking out for other people.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time today, and for sponsoring us. We are very, very grateful for that. And
Thank you.
yeah,
You bet.
and thank you guys for tuning in today, and we hope to see you next time. Go ahead and follow us on any of our social media, and have a good one.